The assignment this week is to take an argument, identify, diagram, evaluate, and judge the argument for its effectiveness. The argument that I'm going to be using is by Stipe Miocic, the current UFC heavyweight champion of the world. After his recent UFC 220 title defense, Miocic claimed that he was the best heavyweight champion of all time. Now we're going to diagram his argument and look to see the effectiveness of it. In order to be the greatest heavyweight of all time, you would need to be the best fighter of your era, which is premise 1. Premise 2 states you would also need to be the best fighter in all eras. Premise 3 is, if a fighter is the best in their era and the best in all eras, then they can be considered the best of all time. Premise 4 states Stipe Miocic is the best heavyweight fighter in his era. Premise 5 is Stipe Miocic is the best fighter in all eras. And then the conclusion would be that Stipe Miocic is the greatest heavyweight champion in UFC history. So now I'm going to evaluate this argument, starting at the beginning. The first premise is, to be the best of all time, you would need to be the best fighter of your era, or what is now commonly known as a champion. UFC and most combat sports deem their best fighters as champions. The second criteria would be the best fighter of all eras, or the best of all champions. Some criteria that is generally used to compare champions or other athletes over ages, or other combat athletes over different eras, is the number of consecutive title defenses, the record in heavyweight title fights, and their consecutive days as a champion. So in order for Stipe to be considered the best, he would need to be considered the best of his era first. So the argument for this is that he has an 18-2 record with a current 6-fight win streak. He has beat the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, and the number 5 currently ranked heavyweight fighters. And he is also on his way to his heavyweight championship, and in his title defense beat 3 former heavyweight champions. The argument that Stipe is the best fighter in all eras, you'd have to take those same criteria and look at them and see how it matches up with the current or some of the better champions of all time. 2 of the best heavyweight champions in UFC history are Randy Couture and Cain Velasquez. The first criterion that we're going to look at is the number of consecutive title defenses. Stipe holds the record currently with 3 that he just set at UFC 220. Both of the others, Randy Couture and Cain Velasquez, have 2 consecutive title defenses. The next criterion we're going to look at is the record in heavyweight championship fights. Stipe Miocic is currently 4-0 and undefeated in heavyweight title fights. Randy Couture had 6 wins and 3 losses, and Cain Velasquez had 4 wins and 2 losses. Next, we're going to look at consecutive days as champion. Cain Velasquez leads this category with 896 days. However, he only had 2 fights in those 2 years, 6 months. Stipe Miocic is currently at 625 days and counting, but he has already had 3 fights in the 1 year and 9 months. And Randy Couture had 623 days as a consecutive champion. Looking at this argument, the premise seems solid, and I would agree and endorse this argument, stating that if you were the best fighter in your era, which I believe Stipe, the evidence shows that Stipe is, and then you're the best fighter in all eras, which the evidence is also very strong for that, then you would be the greatest heavyweight champion of all time.